Engines roar like thunder, cracking the skin of the earth. Metal trembles, hearts race. The countdown isn't just to space, it's to history itself. But beneath that sound, beneath the noise of rockets and applause, there's another voice. Soft, certain, a woman's voice whispering numbers into a headset. Trajectory confirmed. Calm, while the world above her shakes. She's not supposed to be here, not in this room, not in this America. 1962, a country split in half by color and fear. A nation racing the Soviets to the stars, while telling its own daughters they don't belong in the room where the future is calculated. And yet, here she is, Katherine Johnson, her pencil slicing equations faster than the machines can think. Beside her, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, black women in white lab coats fighting gravity and prejudice in the same breath. Every number they speak is a rebellion, every formula an act of quiet defiance, because outside these walls are signs that say colored restroom. Inside, there are equations that will guide a man through the void. The irony burns. They can launch rockets to the heavens, but still must walk half a mile to use the bathroom. And still, they stay, because the stars are waiting, because truth doesn't need permission to shine. John Glenn's capsule spins above Earth. His life depends on math written by hands America refuses to shake. He trusts those hands anyway. Get the girl to check the numbers, he says. And that line, that moment, rewrites history. The engines fade, silence falls. The world looks up at the sky and never sees the women who put it there. But you hear them now, don't you? Those voices under the roar, precise, confident, unstoppable. They didn't just help America reach the stars. They proved that brilliance knows no color, and courage has no gender. So the real question isn't how they did it, it's this. Why did it take the world so long to listen? Picture this. A wide Virginia sky, humid, heavy, quiet. The year is 1953. The future is being built behind chain-link fences and concrete walls, but half the country isn't even allowed through the front door. Before rockets, there was segregation. Before astronauts, there were computers. Not the kind that blinked with lights or hummed with electricity, but women. Flesh and blood, pens, paper, and minds sharp enough to cut through gravity itself. Langley Research Center, the birthplace of American flight dreams. A place where chalk dust hangs like fog, and men in white shirts chase the sky. Yet just beyond those spotless corridors, there's a sign nailed to a wall. Colored computers. Step inside that room. The air smells like graphite and quiet rebellion. Rows of wooden desks, a single overhead light. Pencils scratch in perfect rhythm. Click, glide, whisper, calculate. Each number a secret defiance. Each formula a step toward the impossible. Outside, the world says no. No to opportunity. No to equality. No to their names being remembered. But inside this small windowless room, they whisper yes. They're not building rockets yet. They're building trust, precision, respect. In a system designed to forget them, they leave proof in every equation that refuses to be wrong. Dorothy Vaughan leads them, poised, brilliant, unflinching. She decodes more than math. She decodes the politics of survival. She teaches herself the language of machines before the machines arrive, because she knows what's coming. Automation, Erasure, progress that forgets the hands that built it. Down the hall, Mary Jackson pushes through barriers made of policy and pride. They say she can't study with white men. She files a petition anyway, because knowledge, she believes, belongs to everyone, and no law can outlaw genius. And then Katherine Johnson, quiet, focused, the kind of mind that hears patterns in chaos. When she looks at numbers, she sees flight, trajectories curved like destiny itself. She's not just solving problems, she's rewriting where humanity can go. But every step forward comes with a price. Every lunch eaten alone, every meeting they're not invited to, every restroom they're not allowed to use. America dreams of space while still dividing its own Earth. Imagine it, a nation obsessed with reaching the stars, but afraid of sitting beside a black woman on a bus. That's the contradiction they lived inside. That's the gravity they had to fight before the rockets ever did. Yet, beneath the fluorescent hum of Langley, something is shifting. The walls are still up, but the math doesn't lie. These women are solving problems no one else can. Numbers have no color, and brilliance cannot be segregated. A revolution is forming quietly, not with protests or speeches, but with sharpened pencils and unshakable minds. Each calculation, a crack in the walls that hold them back. Each success, a reminder that truth always finds light. And one day soon, those same hands, the ones scribbling formulas in a colored office, will guide a man beyond the clouds. The world will call it a victory for America, but before that moment, before the glory, before the launch, these women will have to prove something far greater. That genius can bloom in the shadows, and that history, no matter how hard it tries, cannot hide the light forever. Because something in that quiet room, with its chalk dust, sweat, and silence, was about to break. Picture this: a little girl in West Virginia standing beneath a sky full of stars. She doesn't just see the constellations, she counts them. She calculates their distance in her head, tracing invisible lines of geometry through the heavens. Her name is Katherine Johnson. And before the world learns to call her a genius, she's just a child who believes numbers can sing. Numbers did sing for her, clear, perfect, honest, while the world outside whispered something far less kind. Because in 1930s America, a black girl could dream, but she was told not to dream too big. Mathematician, that's not for you, they'd say. But she kept writing, calculating, and believing. She didn't wait for permission to rise. Fast forward. Langley Research Center, a maze of hallways that smell like ink, paper, and quiet ambition. A young woman walks in, holding nothing but a pencil and a mind that could bend the laws of physics. The men glance over their shoulders. They see her color before they see her brilliance. But when Katherine starts to work, when the chalk touches the board, the room falls silent. Equations unfold like poetry. Numbers fall into perfect harmony. Even gravity feels like it's paying attention. Then there's Dorothy Vaughan, the strategist, the teacher, the one who reads the future before anyone else can. While others fear the rise of machines, she learns their language. Late nights, glowing screens, punched cards sliding through metal jaws. IBM, cold, mechanical, replacing flesh and intuition. But Dorothy isn't threatened. She's preparing. She trains herself, then trains everyone around her. Because she knows when history shifts, you either adapt or disappear. And Dorothy refuses to vanish. And Mary Jackson, the fighter. She builds wings for dreams she's not allowed to fly. Every day, she watches men take credit for equations she helped perfect. Every meeting, every experiment, another reminder of where she's not supposed to be. Until one day she sees the barrier for what it is, not just a rule, but a dare. She walks into a courtroom, calm but burning. "I just want to learn," she says. And in that single sentence lies the power to change everything. She wins the right to study engineering at an all-white school. Her victory doesn't echo through headlines, but it echoes through history. 3 women, 3 minds sharper than the blades of the rockets they'll one day help launch. Each facing a world that keeps telling them, stay small, stay silent. But every formula they write is a rebellion. Every calculation a whisper to the universe, we belong here. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, the universe begins to listen. Catherine's math charts the path for John Glenn's orbit. Dorothy's leadership transforms NASA's computing power. Mary's courage cracks open doors for generations to come. But even as their work lights up the heavens, the world below them refuses to let go of its shadows. Separate bathrooms, separate coffee pots, separate respect. They solve for trajectories that will send men into the stars, but can't find a formula to fix the gravity of injustice. Still, they rise. Not by shouting, not by demanding, but by doing what no one else could, by being undeniable. Because sometimes rebellion doesn't come in riots or fire. Sometimes it comes in quiet rooms with pencils and paper and women who refuse to be forgotten. And as the rockets grow taller and the world begins to look up, the question lingers in the air like smoke from an engine's flame. Would their genius be enough to defy not just gravity, but the weight of a world that still tried to hold them down? The year is 1961. The world holds its breath. A silver capsule slices through the sky. And somewhere in Moscow, the sound of celebration shakes the air. Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. The Soviets have won the first round. And America panics. In Langley, Virginia, the hum of typewriters becomes a storm. Chalk squeaks on boards, papers pile like snowdrifts. Men in white shirts and black ties bark equations, their voices sharp, clipped, desperate. The space race isn't just science anymore. It's war without bullets. A war fought with numbers. And in the middle of it all sits Katherine Johnson, head down, pencil in hand, eyes locked on a page full of numbers no one else can tame. Around her, a sea of white men, each carrying the weight of the nation, each doubting her before she even speaks. But she doesn't argue. She calculates. She checks every number the new IBM computer spits out, line by line, digit by digit. She doesn't need wires or blinking lights. Her mind is the machine. Then the call comes. John Glenn, the first American to orbit Earth, is about to launch. But something's wrong. The computer's math feels off. The trajectory uncertain. And when the mission is life or death, uncertainty is suicide.
"Get the girl to check the numbers," Glenn says. The girl, Katherine. No hesitation, no debate. Because Glenn trusts one thing, her mind. The room falls silent as she walks in. The sound of her heels against the floor echoes like a drumbeat. Eyes follow her, some skeptical, some curious, some afraid of what she might prove. She stands before the board, chalk in hand, and in a single motion, the chaos of equations becomes order. Her handwriting dances, curves and lines turning fear into flight. Hours pass, sweat forms on her brow, but when she steps back, the numbers align perfectly, a path through the void. The launch succeeds. John Glenn orbits the Earth, returns safely, and behind the celebration, no one hears the name Katherine Johnson. No medals, no speeches, just a woman returning to her desk, filing the report she wasn't allowed to sign. Because her name didn't fit the narrative. Because history wasn't ready to admit that a black woman's mind had carried a white man to the stars. But she wasn't alone in the shadows. Down the hall, Dorothy Vaughan watches a machine the size of a room hum and clatter. IBM, the future, and she knows it's coming for them all. So she does what leaders do. She learns it before anyone else. Punch cards, binary code. Night after night, she deciphers the language of the machine. Then she teaches every woman around her, turning fear into power. But when the time comes for recognition, when the titles are handed out, her name isn't on the list. They call her a temporary supervisor. Temporary for years. And Mary Jackson, the engineer who wasn't allowed to be one. She sits outside a courtroom, holding a stack of papers thicker than her hope. All she wants is permission to learn, to grow, to design the very ships that could cross the heavens. But the law says no. The judge looks down at her, unimpressed, and she says softly, "Your Honor, if you were trying to go to space, wouldn't you want the best engineer?" Silence. Then a gavel falls. Permission granted. She walks out, not smiling, because she knows the victory is small. But small cracks let the light in. Every day, these women push against walls they didn't build. Every day, they break them, inch by inch, equation by equation. No parades, no headlines, just the quiet revolution of brilliance that refuses to fade. And yet, behind every triumph, another reminder. The separate coffee pot, the long walk to a segregated restroom, the words unspoken, but felt in every glance. Still, they endure, because they know something the rest of the world hasn't realized yet. You can't stop the laws of physics, and you can't stop progress once it's in motion. Katherine's numbers send men safely home. Dorothy's code powers NASA's machines. Mary's designs shape the future of flight. And even though their signatures don't mark the reports, their fingerprints are everywhere. So, as rockets pierce the sky and astronauts touch the stars, one question lingers, burning quietly beneath the applause, echoing through history. Was this the moment it all fell apart, or the moment everything began to change? Picture this. A fluorescent light flickers above rows of paper, pencils, and tired eyes. It's past midnight. The hum of the building has gone quiet, except for the scratch of graphite against paper. Numbers, angles, velocity, every symbol a heartbeat, every decimal a life. Katherine Johnson leans over her desk, fingers stained with graphite. The room smells like coffee and calculation. Behind her, Dorothy Vaughan runs the numbers through the IBM machine, its gears clicking like a clock that never sleeps. Down the hall, Mary Jackson studies the flow of air over aluminum curves, tracing flight paths no woman like her has ever been allowed to touch. They've missed dinners, missed birthdays. Their children sleep while they rewrite the future. And yet, every equation whispers the same truth. Failure isn't an option. Because one wrong number could kill a man. One misplaced decimal could turn a hero's orbit into a funeral. The pressure isn't abstract. It breathes down their necks. Each launch, each test, each line of math, a bet between life and death. But they do it anyway, because someone has to make sure the stars are safe to reach. Then comes Freedom 7, May 5, 1961. Alan Shepard, the first American in space. A nation glued to black and white screens, the roar of the rocket echoing across living rooms. Families cheering, flags waving, the future finally here. But not for everyone. In Langley, the cafeteria smells of stale coffee and chalk dust. A handful of black women crowd around a small television, the colored section. No fanfare, no headlines. Just a grainy image of a man breaking the sky. The room erupts with awe. Then, quiet. Because as the world celebrates, they sit unseen. Their calculations stitched into history with no names attached. They smile anyway, because they know. They know who made that flight possible. They know every number that kept him alive. every equation that made it safe to dream. The astronauts became legends, but the women behind them remained ghosts.
No medals, no credits, just the hum of another mission starting before the applause even fades. Because the work doesn't end with one flight. Now comes the impossible, Apollo, the moon, the next frontier. And again, the same invisible hands reach for the stars, quiet, steady, relentless. They'll stay late. They'll miss more dinners. They'll solve problems that don't yet have names. And even as history forgets to look their way, they'll keep going. Because for them, the mission isn't fame, it's legacy. The world sees the astronaut standing in the spotlight, but behind him are hundreds of unseen lights, brighter, steadier, unacknowledged. They don't wear helmets. They don't ride rockets. But their minds were the engines. And as the roar of the next mission rumbles through Langley, they pause, just for a moment, to breathe, to look up, to remember what it feels like to chase the impossible. They are invisible, but unstoppable. And one question lingers in the silence. If they can reach the stars from the shadows, what else could humanity achieve if we finally learned to see the ones who make us fly? Imagine this. July 20th, 1969. A black and white television hums in every living room on Earth. Static, silence. Then, a voice crackles through the speakers. That's one small step for man. The world stops breathing. Children hold their parents' hands. Strangers cry in bars. The sky itself feels smaller, closer, conquered. Humanity has touched the moon. But far from the spotlight, hundreds of miles away, a different kind of light glows. Not from rockets or cameras, but from the flicker of fluorescent bulbs over empty desks. Langley Research Center. The hum of machines replaced by the faint scratching of chalk, still fresh on blackboards that carried the weight of the impossible. Because before that footprint was pressed into lunar dust, before Armstrong looked up from the ladder and saw eternity, there were hands, quiet, steady, brilliant hands, that had already mapped the way home. Katherine Johnson's equations, lines of ink on paper that curved through space and back again. She'd run the numbers until they sang in perfect harmony. The re-entry angle, that single fragile line between survival and burning alive, was hers. A fraction of a degree off, and the capsule would skip like a stone across the atmosphere, lost forever. But she got it right, flawless, precise, invisible. Dorothy Vaughan's code pulsed beneath it all, the hidden rhythm of IBM machines guiding men through the void. She'd trained an entire generation to speak the language of logic before the world even knew what programming meant. Her fingerprints are buried deep in the lines of binary that powered the future. And Mary Jackson, the engineer who fought her way into classrooms that tried to keep her out. Her designs streamlined the aerodynamics that made rockets slice through resistance, carving humanity's path to the stars. Yet as the world watched the moon rise through television glass, the camera never turned toward them. No applause, no spotlight, just shadows on the walls, and the soft hum of cooling machines. In the control rooms, names are shouted, glory is assigned. History starts writing its version of truth, and somewhere it decides which heroes to remember and which ones to forget. But if you walk those Langley halls and listen closely, you can still hear it. The echo of chalk, the whisper of paper sliding across desks, the quiet rebellion of women who refused to be erased. Because they knew something the world hadn't learned yet, that greatness doesn't need a stage. That sometimes history's loudest voices belong to those who never spoke above a whisper. As Armstrong's boot pressed into the dust of another world, the world cheered for the man who took the step. But it was Katherine, Dorothy, and Mary who built the staircase. And the question that lingers after the static fades, after the broadcast ends, isn't just how far we've gone, but who we still forget when we finally reach the stars. Picture this: a dimly lit archive room. Dust dances through a single shaft of light. Boxes stacked like tombstones of forgotten brilliance. And somewhere in the silence, a hand opens a file. The paper crackles. A signature glints faintly in ink. K. Johnson. A name nearly erased by time. A name that once calculated the stars. For decades, her work slept in silence. The world had moved on. Rockets launched. Nations changed. Heroes immortalized. But not her. Not them. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson. Their brilliance buried under layers of history that chose not to look. Then one day, a historian lingers on a line that doesn't fit, a report too perfect to be anonymous. Who wrote this? Who could have written this? The truth begins to whisper back. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a name on the walls of NASA headquarters. It was a black woman whose equations carried men into orbit and safely back to Earth. And suddenly, the story of America's space race begins to unravel.
Because for every Armstrong, every Glenn, there were hands unseen. Hands that shaped flight paths and broke barriers. And the world gasps, not just at what they achieved, but at how completely they were forgotten. The discovery spreads like wildfire. Articles, interviews, whispers turning into headlines. The hidden figures of NASA. And then, the film. A darkened theater. The audience leans forward. The roar of rockets echoes again. But this time, the camera turns toward the women behind the equations. Katherine's eyes reflect the light of the launch. Dorothy's fingers glide across early computers like a pianist. Mary's defiance fills the courtroom with quiet fire. It's not fiction. It's history, finally speaking for itself. And when the credits roll, something shifts. Schools add their names to lessons. Children, especially little girls with brown skin and bright minds, see reflections of themselves in the stars. No longer hidden. No longer a footnote. The White House. Katherine Johnson, now 97, stands small beside the President of the United States. The Medal of Freedom rests against her heart. Applause fills the room, but her eyes, calm, humble, seem to see something far beyond the cameras. Maybe she's thinking of the long nights at Langley, the endless equations, the battles fought quietly and won invisibly. Maybe she's thinking of Dorothy and Mary, her sisters in the fight for recognition, and how they'd smile at this moment. Proof that truth cannot stay buried forever. The applause fades. The world moves on again. But the question remains, hanging in the air like a star refusing to die. If it took half a century to uncover their names, how many more Katherine Johnsons lie sleeping in the dark, waiting for someone, anyone, to open the right file, to read the right line, and to finally whisper, "You were never forgotten. The world just took too long to remember." Picture this: a rocket tearing through the clouds, engines roaring like thunder, 1,000 tons of metal defying gravity, all because, decades ago, a handful of women refused to stay invisible. Their equations still live in every launch. Their logic still whispers through the hum of supercomputers. Every orbit, every re-entry, is a love letter to the mind's history almost buried. Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson. They didn't just change NASA. They changed the definition of genius. Not the loud kind, not the celebrated kind.
The quiet kind, the relentless kind, the kind that keeps building the future, even when no one's watching. Think about it. Every time a rocket ascends, it's tracing the invisible fingerprints of those who once weren't allowed to touch the controls. Their math became the language of flight. Their courage became the foundation of exploration. And now, generations later, the world they dreamed of is finally waking up. New faces, new voices. No longer hidden, no longer waiting for permission. The countdown echoes again. 5, 4, 3, engines ignite. And somewhere in that sound, you can still hear them. The women who calculated the impossible. The ones who turned silence into progress. The ones who proved that genius has no color, no gender, no limit. So as the next rocket disappears into the stars, remember, they're still up there. In every formula, in every flight, in every dream we dare to launch. And maybe, just maybe, we're only beginning to see what happens when no one is hidden anymore.